And then, of course, the legislature has an opportunity, only that it's now too late to override. But back to the central issue. I think there's a big problem here, is the conception of INEC as a merely transactional agency. INEC is, first and foremost, a regulator. I've been a regulator myself. The primary rule of regulator, three important things about regulator. One, rulemaking. The regulator makes rules. It's not a take-off rules. The first principal enactment, the Electoral Act and the Constitution, has already authorized INEC to act in line with its mandate to run efficient elections. So the detailing, the administrative processes, the procedures are all within INEC's control. Section 160 of the Constitution, 1, sub 1, makes it very clear. It singled out INEC as the only agency, federal government agencies, that not just authorized to make rules, but whose rulemaking outcomes are not subject to presidential veto, presidential approval. So the law says, look, the Constitution says other agencies created hereby are free to make their own rules, create offices, place burden on people to perform functions, and subject to the president's approval in the concept of executive presidency, which Section 5 says the executive power is in the president, who may exercise it by himself, vice president, minister, or any other person. And by the Electoral Act, INEC has been created and donated that power irretrievably, except by law, to exercise that function of presidential management of election by INEC. And so the law says you can't approve INEC. INEC is so free. INEC is the only agency in the country that has the capacity to make its rules without any presidential approval. What does that mean? It means three things. One, it means that the whole hula baloo around the new Electoral Act and the president signing it might actually be an oversold. The laws are good, those provisions are important, but INEC can actually, by rulemaking and administrative action, create those outcomes. For example, there's no reason why INEC will not mandate that voters' results be archived and stored in retrievable and accessible form. That is part of the authorization by law and by Electoral Act. And Section 52 of the amended Electoral Act, the one that's presently Esther, the one that President Jonathan signed about a month to election 2015, makes it very clear that INEC has the powers to conduct election in line with guidelines it sets. So clearly, if you ask me, the bottom is knocked off that argument. Now, as also a chief executive for 5 years, I can tell you straight away that the independence of any agency is not described or defined by law. Law barely lays out a framework. The other aspect is what we call institutional performance. It's about leadership and how they feel the content of law. So if INEC wants to be independent, of course, you expect, like OK said, you're going to expect self-interested actors in the political landscape, including the presidency and opposition, to leverage on their power over INEC, to try to coerce, force, suggest, manipulate, coerce, and seduce INEC to do their bidding, to bring outcomes and favor them. It's for INEC to really sit back and say, look, we are the managers. You see, INEC is a regulator. The Central Bank of Nigeria does not wait for the Minister of Finance of National Assembly to make laws that authorize it to step in and provide AMCON or other kind of contingency safeguard for contagious risk.
Let's talk about that process.
INEC
Let's talk about that process that you just mentioned again. My apologies. Let's talk about that process that you just mentioned again. If we look at this scenario where INEC goes ahead to display the election results at the polling centers or the polling units and is able to transmit those results to its server, does that in effect jettison the amendment of the electoral bill and those provisions in it? Does it in any way supersede us having to go through that process of Electoral Act amendment?
Totally. I want to say this straight away, that the Act, the National Assembly, motivated by good faith, perhaps the electoral reforms amendments are not as important. INEC, you don't need the existing two sections, 161 and 2, subsection 2 of the Constitution, 52 of the Electoral Act as amended, authorizes INEC to take these actions. Don't forget that before even Mr. President vetoed, refused to sign the bill, INEC had some INEC officials, including Professor Bioma, somewhere I think in Abia also, here Southeast, REC, they have all said that INEC was going to digitalize the election this year. INEC is a question, three functions now. One, is INEC prepared, political will, leadership will at the level of INEC? Two, does INEC have the proven technology and the process of administrability and review to say, today we are ready to implement this process? Because, by the way, you can write it by law, but you need implementation. You need a project management process to establish the practicality of those things. So if INEC is capable, if INEC is committed to doing that, and if INEC understands that, look, the quality of election depends on INEC's regulatory, not just transactional. You see, look at INEC as that body that prints ballot box, prints electoral materials, ensure the logistic management of those boxes to arrive on time, ensure that there are ad hoc officers, they are there, and the results are declared. No, INEC is first and foremost that body that makes rule. Second, that body that changes behavior through implementation of those rules. And thirdly, that body that makes determination as to right and wrong. From that perspective of a regulatory framework, you will now see that INEC is empowered by law, by the Constitution, by the way, and by Electoral Act to step in. It's a normal process of managing the election. INEC decides that we can improve the digital accuracy and the digital efficiency of the election this year. We have seen faults that usually the whole crisis over voting occurs from polling booth to collection center to when the results are announced. There is, for example, in Osun, the problem with the PDP's allegation is that they want clear, if not because about 3,000 votes were stolen from them or 3,000 added and 1,000 taken from them, making them about 4,000 votes. So if that allegation is true, they claim they win. Now, INEC, not the National Assembly, not the President, has primary responsibility to plug that hole. And INEC has legal and constitutional authorization. What it lacks at this moment is a mental, is conceptual. The idea that INEC is just there to administer, which simply means move box A to B. INEC is there to reshape the electoral landscape. INEC is there to make rules that guide the election. INEC is there to even change the character of the election. So if you ask me, INEC is empowered by constitution, by law, to forget what the ping pong between the National Assembly and the presidency is expected within a competitive constitutional governance, where the president is given power to checkmate a National Assembly that perhaps, due to intra-party or even inter-party conflicts, he has no confidence in. And the National Assembly has the power to override the president who wants to encroach in their responsibility. But the INEC as an agency created by the Constitution, not even by the Act, and the agency that the Constitution has given power should not feel intimidated by Mr. President's failure or any pressure from anybody. Okay. It's a matter of character.
All right, we'll continue along that line, but that will be after this break.